Another year, another Game Awards, hosted by none other than the president of the Hideo Kojima International Fan Club, Jeff Keighley. This show was honestly more stuffed than I anticipated, or at the very least faster paced. This is probably due mostly in part to Jeff being much more restrictive about speeches this time around, and putting even less emphasis on the award giving and more on the announcements to a pretty ridiculous degree. Winners were given the hurry the fuck up music after only 30 seconds, which is insanely small in and of itself, but made worse by the fact that celebrity guests were given all the time in the world to make shitty jokes. It's a wonder if this ceremony is meant to celebrate the industry anymore. I can't really say I've ever respected these big, grandiose award shows, so I only watch the Game Awards for the announcements anyway. But the de-emphasis on the actual awards was clearer than ever. That being said, I do have some comments to make on those awards, but I'll get to those later. Before I tackle the content of the event itself, I want to acknowledge another separate announcement that was more or less its own event: the long-awaited Grand Theft Auto 6 trailer. It's only about a minute and a half long, but there's a pretty good amount of footage showing us what this new, bigger, and more detailed iteration of Vice City will be like. And as many Floridians have already stated, it's very true to life. The game itself looks absolutely gorgeous, to the point where I'm worried if it'll even look this good when it's actually out. But Red Dead Redemption 2 actually ended up looking better in the final release than in trailers, so maybe I'm concerned over nothing. It just looks so dense with assets and detail that it kinda boggles the mind. Even Cyberpunk 2077 after the 2.0 update doesn't look this lively. Beyond that, I'm very interested in the relationship between the two protagonists, Lucia and Jason. It's honestly really good that Grand Theft Auto 6 was not announced at the Game Awards. It would have completely and utterly stolen the entire show's thunder. You can tell this by the simple fact that the trailer has over 130 million views on YouTube after only 4 days. But I'll finish my GTA 6 thoughts here. Let's just say I'm optimistic, at least for the technology, if not for the content. Now it's time for the Game Awards. Let's start off by diving directly into some of those juicy reveals and updates. Like I said, this was a pretty stuffed show, so to keep things a reasonable length, I'm going to only discuss the stuff I'm personally interested in the most, which is already a pretty long list, so I gotta keep it centered around games that I consider high priority. And I'm gonna go in the order they appeared in at the ceremony. First is Metaphor by Atlas, the game that I thought was Persona 6 when it was first revealed, but no, it's actually just real-time combat fantasy Persona instead, and that's totally cool with me. It looks incredibly promising and stylish, and it was given a fall 2024 release window, so it's quite a ways away. Next is the new era of SEGA. Apparently they decided to wind back the clock a bit and give some love to their older IPs they haven't touched in a while, because they just decided to drop a fucking nuke on everyone by announcing 5 games at once: Jet Set Radio, Streets of Rage, Shinobi, Golden Axe, and Crazy Taxi. They're all coming back with new games, and we're given a brief glimpse at each one. We just don't know the extent of them. Are they sequels, prequels, remakes? They didn't say. All they gave was that these are games they're working on and will be releasing over the next few years. Sadly, Virtua Fighter 6 was not among them, so I'm gonna have to keep waiting on that front. It feels like Sega is just fucking with VF fans at this point. Next is Team Ninja's Rise of the Ronin, the open-world action game with combat reminiscent of Nioh that was shown off at a Sony State of Play quite some time ago. I was hoping this game would show up at the PlayStation Showcase that happened earlier this year, but it was unfortunately a no-show then. But it's here now, and it looks really cool. Except for one thing: the release date. It comes out March 22nd, 2024, which is the exact same day as Dragon's Dogma 2, another open-world action game that I am looking forward to just as much. This is absolutely painful, not because I have to pick between one or the other. I'm an adult with a full-time job and no spouse to wag their finger at me, but I know I won't be able to resist just switching back and forth between them, taking twice as many days as I normally would to finish them if they were just spaced out more. My focus is going to be divided for a while because these are presumably 40 to 60 hour games we're talking about. The entire first quarter of 2024 is going to be insane for me, with Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth in January, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth in February, and these two games on the same fucking day in March. Absolutely nuts. Next is Jeff's best buddy, who you may know as the creator of Metal Gear Solid and Death Stranding, Hideo Kojima. I think it's safe to say that everyone expected him to show off another trailer for Death Stranding 2, especially since it's been a year since we saw the announcement trailer for it, but no. Kojima had something else entirely different in store for us, his rumored horror project created with Xbox. The rumor had the game titled as Overdose, but now it seems to simply be OD. It stars Sophia Lillis, Hunter Schafer, and Udo Kier. And while there's no gameplay or even in-engine footage at all, instead it's just a recording of the stars having their faces captured, it's still quite an eerie tone setter. But it doesn't stop there. Turns out it's made in collaboration with Jordan Peele, who also came out on stage to sing Kojima's praises, and Kojima returned the favor. The short interview closed off with Kojima saying that there are more collaborators he'll reveal in the future. So while I'm very interested in Death Stranding 2, I am still keeping my eye open for OD as well. Next is Black Myth Wukong, a Chinese-developed Souls-like obviously inspired by Journey to the West. We've been seeing enthralling gameplay of this for a while now, but if memory serves, this is the first time we've heard English voice acting. And that's how you know a game not made in America is pretty close to being done, because usually English dubbing is one of the ass-last things they do, exceptions being huge IPs like Final Fantasy. Now if only Lost Soul Aside could get a fucking release date as well after 10 years of development, and maybe I'll stop thinking it's a money laundering scheme of some sort. Now we have Skull and Bones, and I'm not personally interested in it, but it seems pretty amusing that they seem to have now added giant monster hunts to the game. I don't recall that being in any promo material until now. And the game's release date is February 14th, putting it right in the middle between Infinite Wealth and Rebirth, so it might get buried, which could be deliberate. I'm not eager for the game, but I am eager for the response to it. Next is something that is actually cool, and it's Arcane Leon's Blade game. I'll be the first to admit I was extremely lukewarm on Deathloop. I touched on this a couple times before. I played that game hoping for it to become the 9 or 10 out of 10 experience that so many reviewers rated it as, and it just never happened. But a Blade game by this team, that could hit, and hit hard. So I am for sure keeping my eyes on this. Next is Mecha Break, a player versus player mech action game. Mechs are pretty hot right now thanks in no small part to Armored Core 6. So striking while the iron's still nice and red is a good idea for any mecha game that even slightly resembles the action of AC, which is what Mecha Break does for me. It also brings up a little bit of Zone of the Enders too in some shots. Anyway, there's 3 confirmed modes, 3v3, 6v6, and Battle Royale. It looks really cool, but the primary thing with online games like this is how it's monetized, which we have yet to see. I am very interested though. After that is Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine 2, which now has a release date of September 9th, 2024. There's not much to say about it except it just looks fucking awesome, and I'm sad that I have to wait another 9 months. But hey, at least it's not coming out in the first quarter and making that whole time frame even harder for me. After that is the reveal of both Final Fantasy XVI DLCs. Echoes of the Fallen and the Rising Tide. The former was actually a shadow drop that released right after the Game Awards ended, and I haven't gotten to it yet, but I will by the time this video is uploaded. Although it doesn't really help that I finally just uninstalled 16 like a week ago because I thought DLC was still a ways off. The Rising Tide, however, seems to be the bigger DLC of the two because it's going to cover the lost icon of Leviathan. That's the one I'm most eager to play, but it's due for spring 2024. And last, but sure as shit not least, is the Final Fantasy VII Rebirth trailer. We caught a glimpse of it during the live performance of the game's new theme song, but it turned out to be only half of the new trailer that came out right after. I'm not going to do a huge breakdown or analysis, simply because there's so much shit in here that I'm honestly wondering if I should start a Rebirth media blackout. I know for a fact that I'm not going to watch the launch trailer because Square loves putting actual, honest-to-God spoilers in their launch trailers. But anyway, this new one has a fuck ton of stuff to go over, and I'm just gonna rapid fire it. Bugenhagen is here, and the party seems to be in Cave of the Gi. We get a better shot of Vincent and his swanky new dungeon with a vending machine. We see Zack talking with Biggs. We see brief shots of Calm, the cargo ship, the interior of the Gold Saucer, and I think the prison. We get more footage of dual techs with Cloud and Aerith, and Tifa and Cait Sith. We see Dio and more Gold Saucer action. We finally catch a glimpse of Cid and hear his voice for the first time. There's more footage of summons, including Titan, Phoenix, Bahamut Arisen, and I think Kujata. Barrett and Dyne are seen interacting, and I'm sure that scene is gonna hit really fucking hard. Zack talks to Marlene, which is an interaction so insane that I would be willing to bet money that it hasn't even happened in any fanfiction you could find on the internet. And Marlene mentions that if someone, likely Aerith, wakes up, then a scary man will kill her. Wonder what that means. Then we cut to the musical portion of the trailer that was shown at the Game Awards. It shows Aerith singing to an audience. Someone who looks suspiciously like Jessie dancing with the performers. Cloud, Barrett, and Red all dressed up for the Gold Saucer play, a brief shot of the Nibelheim incident, some Cloud and Aerith date moments, more Gold Saucer shenanigans, Cid and party taking off in what I assume is the tiny Bronco, Dyne looking at Marlene's picture, Zack with a comatose Aerith, and finally, a very, very ominous last shot of Aerith praying in what seems to be City of the Ancients, with whispers reappearing and floating around behind her as black feathers fall from the sky. Whew. As you can see, there's a lot to unpack there. And again, I am seriously considering a media blackout from this point forward. Final Fantasy VII Remake is what got this channel started, so needless to say, I am very interested in Rebirth. Beyond all that, there's also something to say about notable absences as well. Mainly the total lack of a Shadow of the Erdtree reveal. A lot of people, including me, were pretty confident that it would appear here, but it seems like the expansion for Elden Ring is still quite a ways off. I'm not complaining, to be honest, because the last thing I need is for the first 3 months of 2024 to be more stacked than it already is. As I mentioned, I'll have Infinite Wealth, Rebirth, Dragon's Dogma, and Rise of the Ronin to keep me busy. I don't need another 30 plus hours of Elden Ring on top of that. Now, before we close this recap off, I might as well take the time to touch on the awards themselves. Like I said before, 30 measly seconds for speeches was way too strict. If anything, it's the incredibly lame celebrity appearances that should have been that short. We didn't need Simu Liu or Anthony Mackie up there for more than half a minute. Seriously. It's also kind of fucked up that so many categories were sped through like a slideshow. I can understand that for some categories, like the fan-voted ones, but genre-related wins should be presented on stage. If a game is the best in its genre for the entire year, it should be presented on stage. And please, just fucking get rid of the esports categories. Who fucking cares? They have their own award ceremony now, and even then, it's a competition-based industry anyway, so everyone is already chasing prestige through tournaments and shit. Why do they even need an award ceremony on top of that? Every year, this show focuses more on announcements, and I don't even mind that as a person who dislikes award shows on principle. But if Jeff's gonna pretend that this event celebrates the industry, then he needs to start doing a better job, because this is just Winter Games Fest instead. In fact, he should just make that an official event and just change the Game Awards to 2 hours of him presenting awards from his house and just have the winners send a pre-recorded thank you speech. At least it would feel more sincere. So with that little rant out of the way, let's touch on the actual results. For the most part, I'm actually quite satisfied with the winners. I feel like most awards went to games that I felt deserved them, at least among the nominees. In fact, some of them were such no-brainers that there might as well have not been any other nominees in those categories at all. No shit, Alan Wake 2 won Best Art Direction, Best Narrative, and Best Game Direction. That must have been the easiest decision the judges have made all year. That being said, I was still pleasantly surprised by some other categories. Final Fantasy XVI absolutely deserved Best Score. I don't care how anyone feels about the rest of the game, but Soken fucking cooked on that OST. Even though I would still argue that it's not even his best work. Hi-Fi Rush absolutely deserved Best Audio Design. It's one of the most fun and unique rhythm games ever made. I'm also relieved to see Best Indie Game go to Sea of Stars, a game that's actually indie and not Dave the Diver. Even though Dave the Diver is a great game, it's just not an indie game. It was made by a studio owned by Nexon. And of course, Armored Core 6 absolutely deserves Best Action Game. It's a pulse-pounding mecha game with crazy kinetic action. And obviously, Street Fighter VI deserves Best Fighting Game as well. You can't give it to Mortal Kombat 1 simply because it's missing a ton of features that past NetherRealm games have had. Meanwhile, Street Fighter VI was quite possibly the most high-quality fighting game on launch ever. I don't think any other fighting game launched in as good of a state as this game did. Tears of the Kingdom won Best Action Adventure Game, and it almost feels obligatory. I don't say that to insult the game, but I think it's very telling of how incredible this year has been regarding the quality and amount of games that came out, that a Zelda game barely got away with one award. Back when Tears of the Kingdom first came out, everyone and their mother would not shut up about how it was going to sweep every Game of the Year award from every publication and show ever. And then Baldur's Gate 3 came out. And then Alan Wake 2 came out. It became a very different ballgame. 2024 looks to be no slouch either. And that's pretty much everything I have to say on the Game Awards. Overall, it was a good showcase event, but a terrible award ceremony. Admittedly though, I am just here for the new shit. People who actually do care about the award giving might feel very differently from me. This concludes my thoughts on the Game Awards 2023. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you around.